We're going to move on to a survey. You would have heard the tips from the expert in the survey results that were presented yesterday. Today is the 360-degree feedback. If you talk to CFOs, CEOs, and you talk to internal and audit committee and a whole lot of chairs of all those committees, you get insights that are worth sharing in a forum like this, and that's how we'll be closing. Sangita and Brian will be in a better mood this time. He won't be wanting anybody fired. Are they wired? Are they? Okay. So we want to give them a very, very short time because we are really at the end of the program. And I'm going to ask, as they do that, we also ask Mzee Nkongi to come and do the chairmanly thing in closing. I'll hand over to, you have seen Sangita, you have seen Brian throughout the 2 days. But once again, thank you very much, and we appreciate that SADC recognizes the initiatives out here. Without the bloc, we remain individual countries that can never achieve much. Thank you very much, sir. Brian, Sangita, I don't know who's the host, who's the co-host.
Okay, thank you very much, Program Director. Good afternoon, everyone. I guess we've been allocated the graveyard shift again. Is your cell phone off?
I actually left it this time. I don't have my cell phone with me.
As the Program Director mentioned yesterday, we discussed the Audit Committee Effectiveness Survey results of the Audit Committee. Konki additionally conducted a survey with those that are attendees of audit committees. So we're looking at the results of the survey coming from those that normally rely on audit committees, such as your investors and your board, and then those that attend, which are normally your CEOs, CFOs, your external auditors, and even your chief audit executive. I think what we've done additionally is we've looked at the regulators within the financial space, being the FSB and the Registrar of Banks. So we've got a bit of feedback from them on the effectiveness of audit committees. So what Brian and I are doing is we're going to just take you briefly through that feedback that we've received, somewhat around the expectations, maybe certain focus areas that these stakeholders have given us that audit committees should actually look at in order to assist them in fulfilling their roles as a stakeholder within a company. So the questions that we did actually ask were around, yes, expectations where they were, experiences where they felt they were let down, and also areas of focus. So Brian, if I can start first with the investor survey, the key expectations that we picked up from the survey results that investors have on audit committees is financial related, yes, but it's also non-financial related. Stakeholders made it the investors made it very clear that they expect audit committee members to look at other information, other non-financial information, and ensure that it is adequately and correctly disclosed in the documents that come through that are made public or to the investors. I think it was more around allowing them to identify risks if there were any risks, and for them to honestly and independently evaluate those risks. And I think it was more around the shareholder perspective. Our audit committee is actually considering the shareholder's perspective. So I think the biggest thing that came out from the investors was, they wanted principled objectivity from the audit committees. They wanted that independence, they wanted that critical mind, and they wanted that deep knowledge of the markets and the economy.
Sangita, my first take on this survey is just to look at board expectations. As you know, in most instances, the audit committee is a subcommittee of the board. So not much is coming out because it's basically the board regulating some of its members. But there's very key areas or expectations that the board has, which I'm sharing with you. These key areas include quality of presentations to the board. I think in most instances, we know the audit committee recommends to the board for approval. So it's those type of presentations that the audit committee needs to ensure that the quality is right for the board to make their recommendations or approvals. Also around expectations, they expect the audit committee to ensure that they review and monitor risks, risk processes, and also controls. They leave that function to ensure that the audit committee is actually taking a greater scrutiny than the board will take on those areas. And also around the quality and accuracy of financial information. As you know, it is a requirement to have financially literate people sitting on the audit committee. So that's one area that they delegate to the audit committee.
Ryan, I think what was very exciting about the survey is we got an opportunity to speak to the regulators. And normally the regulators don't necessarily comment on how governance structures would be able to assist them in fulfilling their regulatory responsibilities. So what came through was more around the fact that they do rely on these governance structures to be their ears and their eyes. It was more feedback on the fact that these governance structures are in place, and they place that reliance to say these governance structures do have the level of integrity, that they're not really just relying on what management tells them, and they're actually looking into that environment. Also around the regulatory structure and the framework of the organizations and within the industry that they function in, these regulators have a level of confidence that they place in these audit committees. Again, something that came out was around integrity. It was around the audit committees actually going the extra mile, and then the ability of these governance structures to challenge management. And I think the regulator made that very apparent.
We also got a survey feedback from the CEO's expectations of the audit committee. It was quite interesting how diverse and how very different the perspectives are when you compare each stakeholder with their interaction with the audit committee. The CEO was more focused on ensuring that the audit committee at least is effective for him if they cut through compliance-related issues. So the CEO wants the board to understand what are the compliance issues facing the business. The CEO is also interested in an audit committee that understands the business strategy and actually uses that business strategy to focus on audit committee issues. Because, you know, the CEO drives the business. He's more an operational guy. He doesn't want the audit committee wasting time on mundane and small nitpicking things. The other area that the CEO expects the board to focus on is for those multinational companies that CEOs usually operate and run. They want their audit committee to be conversant with foreign jurisdictional matters. So audit committees that have a vast array of understanding as to what jurisdiction and what laws and regulations affect the entity in international legislation. The CEO also expects the audit committee to also manage and monitor the relationship and effectiveness of external and internal audit assurance providers. For him, it's a finance function, and he expects the audit committee to obviously keep a lead on how the assurance providers are giving feedback to the audit committee. He also wants the audit committee to ensure that the IT function within the business is not creating a risk, but it's actually assisting the business to meet its strategic objectives. And he also wants the audit committee to be abreast with issues and link those issues to the impact that those issues have on the business. I think that the CEO, in a nutshell, I think for me, when I read the survey, those were the key issues that I picked up from a CEO's perspective.
Yeah. And then definitely, Brian, you can see it's starting to get a bit more detailed when we get to the executive team. When I looked through the CFO's results, it was even more detailed around the fact that the CFO and everything that comes out of his office is definitely always deliberated by the audit committee. If you think about the financial results, the management accounts, anything that happens within the organization financially related in terms of budgets, all land on the desks of the audit committee. So what the expectations are from the CFO were more around, setting your clear objectives, understanding when and how you want to see the information, translating that expectation into the documents that come in front of the audit committee, having a proper process to provide the reports on each issue that the audit committee may have. And I think what's coming out is the message around having that constant and clear interaction between the audit committee members, the chairperson, and that finance function and the CFO. They're having that clear relationship between understanding your expectations and that translating to the documents that actually come to the audit committee. I think another area which was very important and what was raised by the CFOs was around the chairpersons and the strength of the chairperson within those audit committees. I think the CFOs do spend a lot of time preparing documents, and they do spend a lot of time with the chairperson of the audit committees explaining this detail. And what they're expecting is that when they do get to the meeting, this chairperson must be able to navigate and drive the process to this high level, analysis of what has been put in front of them. So it's almost pushing for that preparation and that readiness that members must be putting in their time before they come to an audit committee meeting. I guess it was more around that enhancing governance. I mean, CFOs also want to see that. The combined assurance, the actual integrated reporting, and definitely the quality of the financial disclosures.
Just coming to the sphere which probably is where we make our money, Sangita, yourself and I, assurance providers. What do assurance providers expect out of their audit committee? So I'm talking both internal and external auditors. The key themes that came out from assurance providers was that they expect the audit committee to provide input at an early stage when they present their audit scoping for approval by the board, by the audit committee. They also touched a bit on IT, because I think IT is an enabler in all these environments. So they want, just like the CEO, they want the audit committee to actually make sure they've got their finger on the pulse on how IT is giving assurance in all the controls that audit committees address when they look at their audit committee issues. And also monitoring of financial controls. That's also a very key area for assurance providers. We do give opinions on controls, and audit committees need to play a part in ensuring that financial controls is something that they are conversant with and they understand how these impact the service that they're getting from assurance providers. They also want to have regular meetings with audit committees, just so that relationship works well, so they are able to report any issues that they want to report outside of the normal management structures, so they can have a direct access to audit committee members, especially the audit committee chair. I think something that was evidenced with the simulated audit committee that we had, where we saw pre-meetings with assurance providers.
No, definitely. Brian, I think the last area or the last stakeholder that we analyzed in terms of the survey was the chief audit executive and the internal audit function. And what came out from here and the expectation was around them having the ability to be able to share best practices and methodologies with the audit committee members and with the chairperson of the audit committee. It was more around having this forward-looking thought process in terms of risks and key risks, being able to sit down and discuss these risks and consider the impact of these risks on the environment, because we must remember internal audit plays that control environment role. It was also around support of the audit committee to the internal auditors in order to execute the internal audit plan, specifically around identification of risks and determining the maturity level of the environment. I think the CAEs and the internal audit see the audit committee as they link into the strategic positioning of the organization, and that also came through pretty strongly on the survey. And there's generally firm support of the internal audit function from the audit committee. I think one example that was raised was around the performance contracting of the CAE and the review of the CAE to be done directly with the audit committee, and I think King is really pushing us in that direction. So Brian, that was the stakeholders and the survey and the results that we've gotten from them. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot more that has been put through. I think it took Brian and I quite a bit of time to unpack the CEO and the CFO feedback. Internal audit feedback was really, really vast in terms of the support and all of that they would like to gain from the audit committee. So before we actually conclude the session, I would like to then take this opportunity to thank Brian for helping me present and analyze the survey results both yesterday and today. And for those that have actually taken part in this stakeholder survey results. Additionally, I'd like to thank Cindy Zilwa for facilitating the surveys and asking all of those questions and typing up all of the answers that everyone's given you. Thank you very much. It has definitely given insight into effectiveness of audit committees. I think it's given everyone tips, and it's also given everyone tips on how they can actually enhance their relationship and their role with other stakeholders who actually come to the audit committee meetings. The results of the audit committee will actually be available on our website, and printed copies can be obtained from our offices. Thank you very much.
Thank you.